Welcome learners to today's session. Today we are going to talk about ethnic relation, conflict and change. This is the unit 2 of block 3 and we previously talked about the principle of equality, indifference and also about inequality. So we will continue with that block. In that block we have unit 2 as ethnic relation, conflict and change. So we will today discuss that. So after listening to this session, you will be able to know about the concept of ethnicity. You will understand the dynamics of ethnic relations and discuss the causes of ethnic conflicts in tribal areas. First, let us talk about ethnicity. What does the word imply? So the concept of ethnicity is often used in relation to tribal problems and the tribal situation. Whenever we talk about tribal situation or we are talking about tribal community, we talk about ethnicity or ethnicism. So conflicts between tribes and non-tribes are explained by saying that they are ethnic problems. Usually they are brushed inside the carpet. So it is therefore very necessary that the meaning of ethnicity and its application be understood. Then we will apply it to the tribal situation in India and draw insights from it. Sometimes the word is used in a derogatory sense. It is as if the tribes have remained backward in their thinking and remain strongly attached to their primordial ties, while the others have moved on to become modern Indians and even global citizens. So when we talk about it in a derogatory way, it implies this. Thus, according to this view, the lack of modern consciousness has left the tribes backward, and there lies the main cause for tribal problems. People of the so-called mainstream often shake their heads and blame the tribes when they hear about violence in tribal-dominated areas. So now, discussing the concept in more detail, the word ethnic comes from the Greek word ethnos, meaning nation. However, it does not mean a political community, but people of common descent or kinship. Later the word entered the Latin vocabulary as ethnicus, which meant outsider and somebody who did belong to the majority community. Max Weber defined ethnic groups as that entertains a subjective belief in their common descent because of similarities of physical type or of customs or both, or because of memories of colonization and migration. So according to Weber, the main characteristics of ethnicity are that it is based on the real and assumed common descent and blood ties, and secondly that people's belief in the common descent makes it irrelevant whether it is real or false. The third implication of Weber's definition is that the commonality of the ethnic people may be any one of the criteria: physical appearance to common historical experiences, and the common belief produces a strong bond between the people. Anthony Smith, another scholar, he describes an ethnic community as a named human population with a myth of common ancestry, shared memories and cultural elements, a link with a history and historic territory or homeland, and a measure of solidarity. Now let us discuss what does ethnicity and nationalism in India implies. Ethnicity and nationalism are often interchangeably used, yet they are seen differently here. When we talk about the various definitions given in various dictionaries, one of the dictionaries like Penguin Dictionary of Sociology that defines nationalism as an ideology based on the belief that people with common characteristics such as language, religion and ethnicity constitute a separate and distinctive political community. Nationalism demands that the group is given the right of self-determination and that they govern themselves. Ethnicity describes communities that have renounced voluntarily or involuntarily the demand for independent statehood and and coexist with other ethnic communities within a single state. Now, Indian nationalists, even before independence, has always insisted that the basis of our nationalism is the Indian civilization, not any particular linguistic or religious community. It was therefore different from the European model of nationalism, whose basis was the homogeneous community. The civilization model of nation would accommodate the enormous diversity of the Indian subcontinent. It is believed that Indian civilization has evolved through many stages, providing a network of institutions and ideologies which offer unity in plurality. And that is what Singh talk about. Tribal population are part of the diversity of India, but it was recognized that tribal situation was very unique and a different approach was needed to deal with the issues. As you would have already read, there are mainly two approaches. One is isolationist and another is assimilationist. So, one believes in isolation and another believes in assimilation. So, the isolationist approach by Verrier Elvin and others advocated that the tribe should be isolated from the mainstream population and efforts be made to restrict the contact of tribes and the outsiders. This would preserve tribal identity and their way of life. On the other hand, the assimilationist approach favored by Ghurye and Thakkar advocated the assimilating of the tribes into the mainstream. They argued that most tribes were anyway part of Indian culturally and socially and hence should be made part of the Indian mainstream. Another scholar, Mazumdar, he talks about that mainstream and tribes can learn from each other cultures, leading to better quality of life. For example, the tribes can learn how to manage their assets and money, while the mainstream society can learn certain aspects from tribes like delayed age of marriage. However, the advocates to these approaches were non-tribes who had experienced tribal life from the outside. Now let us talk about ethnic relations in India in the context of tribals. Milton Jinger is a scholar. In 1997, he gave a framework to understand ethnicity and its impact on society. He said that there are at least 4 major types of multi-ethnic societies in the contemporary world. First was a society built out of formally equal ethnic groups and a society with a major national cultural group and other ethnic communities. Then one separated by highly permeable boundaries. One of the more ethnic groups can be strongly oriented towards an outside society. One or more ethnic groups disadvantaged within the larger society. So these models are typologies and no society can completely fit the model. But these typologies help us to understand that ethnic relations are not only about cultural differences, but there are factors like power, outside orientation that influences the ethnic relations. There are 2 broad possibilities which take place when 2 or more ethnic communities live in proximity. And what are those 2 broad possibilities? One is assimilation, that is a process of boundary reduction that can occur when members of 2 or more societies, ethnic groups or smaller groups meet. So that is assimilation. At the end of the process, if it is successful, there is no major social and cultural differences between the communities. Dissimilation, a process whereby intra-societal differences are maintained and created around subcultural groups. So assimilation and dissimilation are continuous processes and they are reversible also. There are rare cases of complete assimilation and complete dissimilation. Often after assimilation, there exists traces of the community's earlier social and cultural practices. Jinger gives 20 variables that affect the extent and speed of assimilation of an ethnic group, which means that the presence or absence of these variables will increase or reduce the rate of assimilation and dissimilation. These variables are useful in understanding the tribal relation with others in India. However, some of the variables are not relevant in context of India also, and these points are more relevant for an immigrant society like USA than India. Indian tribes are in majority of the cases the older, if not the oldest community of a place. Some tribes have been forcibly displaced either for forced labor or due to developmental projects, in which case the tribes have been uprooted from their original dwelling places. Now let us discuss the theoretical perspectives in ethnic conflicts. Now when we talk about ethnic conflicts, they have taken place throughout the world. It's not only in India but throughout the world. Social scientists have identified different causes for the occurrence of ethnic conflicts. Scholar Horowitz has given us 10 explanations which more or less covers all the theoretical perspective on ethnic conflicts. First is that ethnicity is due to primordial affiliation, which is described as being part of a tradition and hence being indispensable for most communities. The self-consciousness of the community members give it unity, but at the same time draws boundaries with other communities. Thus, traditional notions of who we are and who others are, that leads to conflicts. Ancient hatreds produce conflicts. This is the second point. According to this explanation also, conflicts are the result of long-standing hatred between different communities. And these hatreds become part of the collective memory of the community members and show itself at different situations. Ethnic clash is a cultural clash. This is the third point, wherein different communities have different value system. All of us are aware about it. What is sacred to one is profane to the other. And these different value systems produce conflicts. Religious conflicts can be a value conflict, and this often we see in our country happening. The fourth point is modernization brings about ethnic conflict. So modern values of equality, liberty and fraternity are incompatible with traditional values. Traditional societies which experience modernization are often ill-equipped to deal with changes brought by it. So for example, open competition for resources which were earlier marked for a particular section can lead to conflict. Competition for the political positions can lead to conflict between different ethnic groups. Now the fifth point was that ethnic conflict is caused due to the economic competition between ethnically differentiated segments of the working class or ethnically differentiated traders and customers. The son of the soil movements which are demanding that locals get preference in jobs while outsiders' entry to the jobs are regulated is an example of this type of conflict. I'm sure you must have heard about son of the soil movements happening in different parts of India. So sixth point is that ethnic networks are used to exchange goods and services in societies where there are often cheating in the exchanges. And ethnic affiliations may prevent individuals from cheating their own extended kinsmen. And this situation creates what? A polarized society where two or more groups restrict economic interaction to their own ethnic group. Now the seventh point is that the reduction in transaction costs makes it cheaper for people to interact with their own kinsmen while restricting the interaction with others. But sometimes there is accident in the process which groups interact. This accident leads to conflicts between different communities. Now eighth point is that according to some theorists, elite interests are the cause of ethnic conflicts. We are discussing the different causes of ethnic conflicts. So the eighth point is that it also happens because of elite interests. The elite entrepreneurs make use of their ethnic affiliations and cause ethnic conflicts to serve their political and economic interests. The ninth point is that the theorists using rational behavior theory have given an innovative approach to study ethnic conflicts. They claim that conflict happens in situations where insecurity prevails. Each group is unsure of how the other group will behave, and this feeling of uncertainty causes conflicts. In a situation of limited information and uncertainty, communities have to choose the best available action. At times it is conflict with other communities. Ethnic conflicts are based on the need for survival of the groups. The solidarity the groups develop helps the group to cooperate with other members. It helps the groups to survive, and at times the struggle for survival leads to conflicts. These conflicts help the better organized to survive at the cost of others. The survival of the fittest is the basic philosophy underlying it. And these 10 principles give us a wide range of perspective on ethnic conflicts, which are given below and which I will be discussing. The historical explanations which we discussed was number 1 and 2 point. Sociological explanations were number 3 and 4. The economic and rationality based explanations were number 5 and 6 and 7. Elite based explanations number 8. Rational choice theory explanation was number 9, and evolutionary based explanation was number 10th point. So you can just refer back or listen to it by taking it back, and you can see and relate which theory which point belong to. So Michael Brown in the year 1997 reviews the various causes identified for ethnic conflicts. Systemic explanations, which identifies close proximity, weak regional, national and international authorities, and the lack of security as major regions. Communities are often caught in a security dilemma when they resort to mobilization and conflict. The second point he said was domestic explanations, which identifies the causes as lack of effectiveness of the state in addressing the demands of the communities, the impact of nationalism on inter-ethnic relations, and the impact of democratization. And the third point was perpetual explanations that focus on false history that communities have about themselves and others. So by now you must have understood the various explanations for ethnic conflict. Now we move on to tribal conflicts in India. What are the causes? What are the effects of tribal conflicts? So according to a scholar called Sahni, tribal conflicts are of 3 types. One is tribal conflicts with other tribal communities, then tribal conflicts with non-tribes, and thirdly the tribal conflicts with state agencies, including police and military. However, this is not a clear classification as the situation on the ground is complex. It's not as simple as we generally think. Often the conflicting parties involve an overt or covert alliance between 2 or more parties against others. The alliance are between tribes and non-tribes or between the tribes. It could be intra. It is also alleged that state agencies are also covertly aiding one group against the others. In such situations, it is the actions of the non-tribal community that have pushed tribes into conflict. The major issues of tribal and non-tribal conflict have been land issues. Tribes in India have come in contact with outsiders throughout history. We all know that. However, it was during the colonial period that the contact became common, resulting in several conflicts. Tribal land has been often communally owned rather than individually owned. However, under the colonial law, land had to be owned individually, and tribal land was alienated. Unfortunately, the process has continued even after India became independent. The second point was that settling of outsiders on tribal land. Outsiders, that is non-tribes, have increasingly settled in tribal areas. The main reasons for this are the tribal land is rich in natural resources. Secondly, mining and development activities have increased job opportunities. Thirdly, increased population and pressure on land, and also the perception that tribes are gullible and can be exploited. In many states like Jharkhand and Tripura, the tribes have become a minority because of the influx of migrants. Outsiders have gained enough political and social power to marginalize the tribes. This has built up resentment and hatred in the tribes towards the outsiders. And the outsiders, called the Dikus in the local dialect, is seen by the tribes as the main cause of their impoverishment and their problems. Myron Weiner, in Sons of the Soil, Migration and Ethnic Conflict in India, gives us an idea of tribal perception of the tribal themselves on the outsiders. They feel that the outsiders are not part of their community and are exploiting them. There have been numerous attempts to deal with the problem of outsiders, and one of the major demands of the Assam movement was to identify the foreigners and prevent them from becoming citizens illegally. However, these measures have not been successful because of the problems in identifying foreigners. So we will discuss this much in this session, and in the next session we will continue with this unit. Hope you've understood. You can watch the video again in order to have a better clarity, as we discuss different theoretical concepts also related to ethnicism. We discuss the concept of ethnicity and related theories. So, goodbye, take care. Thank you.